What's going on, guys? It is Corey from SuperKamiGuru9000 and welcome to my review of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Episode 4. For me, this was the first episode of the series where I was kind of like, meh, it was okay. It was just a typical episode, nothing really that crazy happened, and it felt like they spread things out a little too thin. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were introducing a brand new character in this episode, a character who I thought looked hilariously like Chuck Norris. This character's name was Chris Bradford, and apparently he's just this disciple of the Shredder who's apparently one big badass. He also happens to be a very famous martial artist as well, so I don't know how he's able to keep so low-key. What's interesting about this guy is when you're first introduced to him, he's wearing all this really cool foot ninja armor, and to be perfectly honest, he looks a lot like the original Mirage version of the Shredder from the comics. And I'm not sure if this is intentional, but it probably is from the creators of the show. And I really like that. I think it's really cool. But his character overall is kind of just pretty typical. You know, he's just a goon of the Shredder. And he's basically just there to try to figure out who the Turtles are so that they can lure them out and so that they can capture them. And there is a scene at the beginning of the episode where the Turtles fight against the Foot Clan. And it's pretty well done. I'm just glad to see that they're finally fighting against them. And old school fans of the Ninja Turtles will definitely love the line where Donnie's like, "Ninjas in New York? Besides us?" I know you old fans will get that. Foot Clan ambushes them, and so does Chris Bradford, and eventually the Turtles have to run away. This is when Splinter gives his lesson of the episode to Leonardo, where he basically tells him in a fight, does it really matter if it's fair? And I think this is pretty interesting. He trips up Leonardo with his cane, and he's like, "Was that fair?" And Leonardo's like, "No." And then Splinter's like, "Did I win?" And Leo's like, "Well, yeah." Michelangelo is the focus of this episode, and he is obsessed with Chris Bradford, so much so that April actually shows him this Facebook-like website where he's able to friend Chris Bradford. Unfortunately, this just ends up being a trap, and Chris hates Michelangelo. He is just completely annoyed by him, and it's not too much of a stretch because Mikey is just so hyperactive and ridiculous all the time that you probably wouldn't want to hang around him all the time. After countless goofy scenes and ridiculousness, we finally get to the actual point of the episode where we can see that they're actually trying to trap Michelangelo so that they can lure the other turtles in, but also so that they can free Michelangelo and go back to their lair. This will, of course, lead them back. This is where Chris Bradford and the other ninja come back to the turtles' lair, where they actually are ambushed by them in the dark, in a scene that I think is actually really cool. It really emphasizes the ninja-like nature of these turtles, how they're able to move around in the darkness. Something, again, that they never really showed too much in the old cartoons. The action here is short-lived, but it is pretty sweet, and eventually it does get to the point where they do defeat Chris Bradford and all of the Foot Ninja, and they literally flush them out of the sewers, which is pretty goofy to say the least. And you'd think, well, that's the end of the battle, but they still know where they are, and obviously Splinter realizes this as well. So this, like I said, this was a meh episode. It had some okay action in the beginning and at the very end, but this was a very comedy-heavy episode, and it definitely focused a lot on Michelangelo. And, typically when they focus on a single turtle, it's usually done for the sake of character development. However, Michelangelo's always been sort of the most one-dimensional, I believe, of the turtles. You can argue that he's not, and there's some other elements to him that you can see in this episode, but really, he's the goofy-loving party dude, and that's the way he's always going to be, especially in these cartoon series. So, I would have just maybe appreciated a few more moments from some of the other turtles, but still, this was Michelangelo's episode. There were some pretty decent throwbacks to not only the original comics, but also the original cartoon as well. And it's finally great to just see the Foot Clan actually do something in the 4th episode of the series. I am slightly disappointed that the Shredder didn't finally get to do anything yet, but at least he's having some speaking roles at this point. And next week's episode is going to be interesting because I believe they're also going to be introducing another classic villain from the TMNT's Rogues Gallery. And I'm not sure what they're going to do with this guy. I'm not sure if they're just going to make him a mad scientist or if he's going to mutate into a half-man, half-fly. If you know what I mean by that, you know exactly who I'm talking about, so make sure and stay tuned for that. But this episode right here, like I said, it was kind of meh. The animation was still pretty good, but it had some pretty weird characters like this Chuck Norris guy, and, that's just, it didn't really do too much for me, but I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Least favorite episode of the series so far. But next week looks like it's going to be much more promising. Alright guys, so how did you feel about this week's episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where Michelangelo met Chuck Norris on Facebook? You can let me know with your comments below. Remember guys, as always, if you like this video, make sure and give it a thumbs up. That concludes this review today. SuperKamiGuru9000, out.